are ready for the last talk of today. So we're very happy to welcome Sebastian and Risi from Copenhagen. And going back from the theory of computation to maybe more practice, neurocellular automata are one of the iconic models of computing with CAs. And let's learn about the emergent phenomena in them.
All right, yeah, thanks for having me. And yeah, so I guess I also should talk about a little bit the motivation, how I got into artificial life, and those kind of two books were pretty influential to me. So how many people know this evolutionary robotics book? It's actually
I'm an EPFL person.
Yeah, because
I mean, I've been an EPFL person.
Because I asked some people here at EPFL that they didn't know Dario Floriano, who's he's still at EPFL. I mean, now he does a lot of stuff with swarms and drones and stuff, but he was very active in like evolutionary robotics, artificial life, yeah. So this is kind of this was really inspirational to me. Like did a lot of stuff on evolving networks and also even evolving plastic networks and the transition from simulation to physical robots. So a lot of cool stuff in that book, and sometimes still look at stuff in there. And then and before I got to know this book, I remember being in a lecture at the university I studied in Germany, in Marburg, where we talked about these self-organizing maps, and I thought it was really cool that they just self-organize and there's no, you don't have to give them a reward, they just find like patterns in data and kind of, yeah, I feel like that kind of, embodies some of the ideas of artificial life, like self-organization and autonomous systems, and those are kind of the things that got me started. And then I actually applied for a PhD here at EPFL, and so I went to here. The last time I was here was 2007 for an interview, but then I decided to do the PhD with Ken Stanley instead. But yeah, it was kind of fun going back. I don't remember. Somebody said this building probably didn't exist when I was here last time, but it was kind of fun to be back. And yeah, yeah. So and then yeah, then I started. I did a PhD with Ken, and then we did a lot of like neuroevolution stuff, and also a lot of stuff connected to artificial life. But maybe even before that, I was thinking, how did I get on this path? And and maybe this is where it actually started. How many people know this game? Monkey. This was a very only one person. Wow, two. This game is called Creatures, and I think it came out in maybe '94. Hello. Do you know this game? It came out in '94, and it was so much ahead of its time. Like you had these creatures called norms, and they had a DNA, and you could exchange floppy disks to give other people your norm, and you could teach them. There's a paper on it, an artificial life paper actually, where they have neural networks that have Hebbian learning. You could teach them some simple, with these machines, you could teach them simple words and associate that with objects. And so it was like incredible. And maybe this somehow unconsciously put me on this path, but this is one of the like artificial life games that, a lot of things in there that even now would be, I think, pretty kind of impressive. Right. And then initially, so kind of my path towards how did I get started with, also now we do a lot of work on kind of neural cellular automata and kind of developmental system, but interestingly during my whole PhD, I did things that abstracted away development. So like so this, how many people know these compositional pattern producing networks, CPPNs? So this is work by my PhD advisor, Ken Stanley. I should have maybe put his name somewhere. But he basically came up with this method that abstracts away development as an encoding for computers. So instead of going through the development, which takes time and local interaction, he thought maybe we can make a development that skips all this, where you have basically a function, the CPPN, and that you can directly apply this function to create a pattern. So if you have this function, and this function is, for example, is a neural network, and if you have this two-dimensional function that takes as x, y as input, and if you apply that function through points on this grid, you discretize it somehow, and then you put x, y coordinates in, and the output of this function is an int value, or can be RGB or something else. Then you get a two-dimensional pattern. And because this function can also include other activation functions like Gaussian function or sine function, it kind of abstracts away the process of development. Like you can create a symmetric pattern along x by just putting x into a Gaussian function. So now we have a pattern that's symmetric along this axis. We can create a repeating pattern along this axis by putting y into a sine function. So we have a repeating pattern, repetition with some type of variation. And so these things you can use them to create images, but you can also create them, you can use them in a method called hyperneat to also create connectivity pattern of neural networks by not inputting just x and y, but if you describe the a connection by its starting positions, if you situate a neural network in Euclidean space, then you can use a four-dimensional CPPN to determine the connectivity between a neuron at x1, y1, x2, y2. So you can use it also to describe neural networks. And so hyperneat was kind of the predecessor to hypernetworks. And also CPPNs were kind of, people here familiar with this NERV, this neural radiance fields. So this is very closely, like a predecessor of these kind of neural radiance field that also use these different activation functions for like 3D, for this rendering. So we did a lot of work with this on, generating different, so using a CPPN to generate a more complex policy network. We made actually a startup that, it didn't make any money, we just lost money. We thought we can commercialize this by CPPNs generating these flowers here, and then putting it on Facebook, like kind of the next Farmville, but yeah. Let's talk about something else. Here you can generate levels for these kind of Zelda levels, and then we also used it. I did my postdoc with Hod Lipson at Cornell, where we used it to generate these foldable one-dimensional robots. Actually, I'll just get my water. Yeah, so we did a lot, but basically it all was kind of abstracting away this developmental process and generating things in kind of one shot without any kind of time component in it. I feel like I wanted to go back a little bit again into this kind of more idea of collective intelligence, parts that kind of interact and that have some kind of time component, some unfolding over time, some kind of local interactions, because this is how all these systems, what allows them to be so kind of robust to perturbation, which kind of was abstracted away by the CPPN kind of structure. Well, now I remember I already had water here. Okay. And so for this, we have seen a few talks, but that kind of evoke again my interest in kind of using cellular automata, because they are one of these models that have this kind of time component unfolding and local interaction built in. And so still, while you could describe very interesting patterns with a CPPN, it was kind of maybe not so satisfactory that nature doesn't need this kind of global XY locations, and it can still do interesting patterns. So how did nature figure it out, and can we just do it through local interaction? And then I think then we kind of, so you have the normal cell automata. Now we heard a lot about it too. But what we are particularly interested in is this kind of neural cell automata, where I guess everybody here knows it as well, where basically you have a network, a neural network that learns the rules. I mean, we have Selenia earlier on, and so where you have a network that takes as input information from the neighbors and then decides what stage should it be in the next time step. So I heard that Stefano Niscela says hi, and so this is some of his work when he came visiting my lab in 2000, I think it was 16, and then this kind of I know brought maybe took me from the side of CPPN slowly moving towards the side of the cellular automata again, where we did work on combining cellular automata with NEAT. So the idea here was that you have you have the inputs into the system like from your neighbors, and this was just like very simple network, like it was just saying they could only have a few different types of states. Most of them could just have 2 states, and then we used NEAT. So how many people here know NEAT? Okay, so most people know NEAT. So NEAT is a method, an evolutionary method that can grow over evolutionary time the structure of a neural network. So you start with this very simple neural network, and over evolutionary time you can add node and connections and modify them. And so what we did there is we wanted to see how well this system can grow these kind of very simple structures. And there's a long history of using evolutionary computation to grow these kind of different flag-like things, but nobody had done it yet, as far as we know, with NEAT. And we also allowed it to not just add simple sigmoid activation functions through mutations, but also these kind of functions we have seen in CPPN, so Gaussian functions or sine functions. And as it turns out, you can learn, so with this way you can learn to grow some of these patterns. So this tree color pattern was something that was not, we could learn that, but you can already see that the network it evolved was quite complicated. And if we wanted to evolve more complicated things, like the Nordic flag, this was not possible with this setup. So this is something where it failed, yeah.
In this case, is the network being fed the coordinates, or it's some local?
No, in this case, it's only the local. So these are the states of the neighbors.
Ah, okay.
Northwest, east, south.
And center.
Yeah, center. Good. Oh, I forgot what it was. Yeah, it doesn't get any local information. Yeah.
You started from like a blank slate or a seed cell?
Yeah, you start from one seed cell, yeah, we were. So I feel like for those kind of things, if you have a particular, and many people here made the same observation, like if you have a particular target in mind, evolution might not be the best approach. It can do many creative things, but in this case, now you would use differential computation to figure out, how exactly do I have to change the ways of maybe a fully connected convolutional network to figure out how to grow this. But with NEAT, it was not as easy. But it showed that it can grow some of those patterns, and I think it's interesting that you could see the structure, so you could get a sense maybe of some different patterns. Are they more or less difficult to learn, because you can see the complexity of this network. And NEAT has because it NEAT, one important property I didn't mention, NEAT starts small, so NEAT starts only with the input connected directly to outputs, and normally it discovers a structure that has an adequate size for the problem at hand, except if it gets stuck.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So can you go back? So can you explain? So what produces this picture exactly? What's the? I'm not sure I understand the relation between the two, between this and that.
Yeah. So you feed in. So.
The laser is not very bright.
Yeah. Okay. So those are the inputs. The 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now don't ask me which one is which, but those are the inputs that we start with one cell in the middle.
Yes.
And those are the states of the neighboring cells.
I see.
And then you just let it grow, and initially it will, initially this network doesn't have any hidden nodes, and over evolutionary time you add randomly nodes, and then you see the fitness is determined how close is this grown pattern to the target pattern.
I see. So it follows a fixed rule. It's translation invariant rule.
Yeah. So it initially it will be a random connected network. It will grow some random pattern, and that will get a low fitness, right? But one of the individuals in the whole population will be slightly closer, probably, to this target pattern, and then the best ones are selected, like in like a typical evolutionary algorithm, and then mutated. Mutating means adding a connection, removing a connection, adding a node, and over like many hundreds generations, it is able to grow something.
And it's periodic, right?
Sorry?
It's periodic, the application of the rules. The boundary. There's no boundary.
Yeah, there's no boundary. Yeah. So this was one of some of the early things, and as I said before, like evolution doesn't, at least from our experience, it doesn't work so well if you have a particular target in mind. Then you're better off using some supervised learning, and I'll show examples later on. We did this as well. But one thing where evolution shines more is if the task is more open. And in this case, we applied the same idea. You have your neighbors, and we have like a 2-dimensional version and a 3-dimensional version. We have a network that gets the neighbor state as input and outputs the next state. And here we applied it to a slightly different problem. Here the problem is to growing a soft robot that can locomote. So here there's no specific target. We're not looking for one particular soft robot. We're growing a soft robot starting from an initial seed cell, and then we put it in an environment and we just measure the distance that the robot was able to locomote, and that is the fitness that it gets. And this is a task where evolution is doing a better job, and it was finding all kinds of different soft robots that can locomote. And here we have just an example of the one soft robot that it found, and then you can put it into the environment, and then it's able to locomote. And this is also tested initially with these are tests that they also did with CPPNs, but as I said before, if you have a CPPN and can directly you give it XYZ location, then it's easy to make these robots. We wanted to see, can we do something similar, but only where it only has local information. And then the other interesting thing, because you have this kind of self-organizing NCA, you can then cut off, like we wanted to see what happens if we cut off a limb. Then of course it's not able to locomote anymore, but we can train it to being able to replicate, to being able to recover, and then it's able to recover and is able to locomote again. Yeah.
So here the locomotion, the neural CA is just choosing the type of cells that make the robot, and each cell has a specific jump.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I forgot to mention that. Yeah. So we have different types of, we have a soft, harder kind of bone, and we have different material that oscillates at different frequencies. So the whole, the function is completely described by the material distribution. And then I just wanted to show some other, so other people have used it also for, so this is Sam Earl and from Julian Tugelio's lab. You can not only use it to, you can grow the soft robots, but you can also, interesting application is to growing game levels as well. So here it outputs, also this is also evolved, and the fitness function is different. Like the fitness function measures, is there a path between the agent and the goal and the key? And I'm including this example because there's some interesting things going on inside of the NCA. Like unfortunately, in the paper they didn't visualize the hidden channels of this NCA. But apparently, like if you have, you're rewarded for only having one key in a level. If you have more than one key and only one door, then that level would be said to not be functional. And apparently, like once you have multiple keys, one key will in one of the hidden channels send out like a kill signal that kills all the other keys in the environment. And that way, at the end of this growth process, you have a level that only has one key and one door and is a functional level. And this is just the architecture and some nice visualization how it does its thing. In comparing with CPPN, they actually found that the NCA approach generates a more diversity in the type of maps. So that was something that I was pretty surprised by, because I thought the CPPN should be easier because it gets more information, but actually the NCA does a good job there. And so one thing, the approaches I showed you before, they all kind of have this limitation that you need one NCA to generate one particular artifact. So I needed one NCA to grow one robot. I needed one NCA to grow one particular type of flag. I needed one NCA to grow one type of, one particular game level. And so one thing we have been exploring a little bit, can we kind of meta train NCAs where you have one NCA that is particularly trained to produce a diversity of outputs by conditioning it on a particular kind of DNA-like string. And we train this thing in meta training so that we can easily search this representation, and we train it, we encourage it to create quality diversity. So at the end that you have one NCA that you can condition with different input to get more than one output. And so for this, we developed this, what we call meta NCA, where you have a, so basically this is your NCA, but it has this attention mechanism to this kind of DNA-inspired string, which is also evolved. So you basically have a population of NCAs, and for each NCA, you have a population of DNAs, and if you put those DNA strings into the NCA, they generate you a different type of output. And this is kind of the whole setup, and we tested this on a very, inspired by this game level generation, but simplified, where you have to generate a map where you have this kind of path from some location to another location, and we can, and then we measure, we use a behavior characterization that says the path length and the amount of symmetry in the map. How many people here know about kind of quality diversity? Okay, also quite a few. So basically what we do is we in the outer loop, we evolve these kind of parameters for an NCA. So each one of those is a different neural cell, the parameters for different neural cell automata. And then in the inner loop, we evolve this population of DNA strings. And then we take one NCA, we put those different DNA strings, we condition it, and we encode, we grow this type of level, and then we measure how much diversity, depending on path length and symmetry, does it produce. So here we can see, for example, that this NCA with these strings produces a lot of levels that have, path length, a lower path length. It doesn't produce anything in this area with where there's a longer path. And this is basically what the mapper leads, or quality diversity. So we measure the fitness of an NCA depending on how much quality, meaning how good are these levels, and how much diversity does it generate. So we can directly optimize for the ability to generate quality diversity. And if you then after this optimization process, we then basically we have. Oh.
Excuse me.
There's a question.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Each point of this is generated by a single DNA or a combination of DNA?
Yeah, so each point here is a single DNA string, and they're all encoded now by the same NCA. Yeah.
They are random?
Sorry?
The DNA strings are random, or
They are random. At the start they were random. Now they are evolved.
Okay.
So,
Are they evolved how? Like for all the NCA rules, or for each?
So for each NCA, like in the inner loop, we evolve a population of DNA strings. And at the end, we save for each one of those in this map. Each point is a DNA string that we then put into that CNA that was in that NCNA that created this map.
And
Yep.
the DNA strings are shared between the NCAs, right?
No, they're particularly evolved, like in the inner loop, for each NCA we evolve DNA strings. Yep.
Is sort of the mapping similar between the between the DNA and the behavior of the NCA? So DNAs are close to each other, produce close acting NCAs?
I think in generally, yes, there is locality, so smaller mutations, yeah. And we can look at some, so here we will see it some now that, so this is filling, so what you saw there at the start, actually, so this is the start of the inner loop. And then after we let it optimize the DNA, the DNAs, this is what you get at the end of this, at the inner loop. So you get this map filled, the map elites map. Then you can take one of those, and that is basically, this is what you see on top. This is the DNA string. And if you give this to the NCA that created this map, then it will grow, this particular, it will grow this particular game level. And here you can see the DNA, what is it paying attention to in the DNA while it encodes something. And then we can take another one. The only difference is a different DNA string, so the NCA is completely the same. We can let that run, and it creates another game level. This game level should have a less symmetry than the other one, but a similar path length. And then we can take another example, something in the middle. Again, it has a different DNA string, and we can let it grow. And one thing that we find is that over time, so here we plot the inner loop. Actually, only don't look at this one here. So what we find is that at the end of this, so here we have the performance of the inner loop training over evolution. So like these darker lines is early in evolution of the outer loop of the NCA. And we can see that in the after a few inner loop training steps, that not much improvement happen on the coverage in the map elites. But later in evolutionary time, we see that it actually very quickly in just the inner loop goes to fill large parts of this map. So basically what this shows that these NCAs became more evolvable over evolutionary time. Like at the end, you have an NCA that very quickly you find DNA strings that produce quality diversity. Does that make sense?
So this evolution of the NCAs, in some way, it's emergent, right? In a way, it was in the fitness function that you. It just so happens that NCAs that are more, I don't know, evolvable have been selected over time.
Yeah, I mean the fitness function did encourage quality diversity.
Right.
So because we looked basically at the map that was filled, the coverage and the quality, and then that is what they were evolved for. And yeah, so in the end you have one NCA that can produce different artifacts. Of course, these are quite simple, so a next kind of step would be to apply this to more interesting problem than these simple kind of mazes. One thing, it is a little expensive because for every neural cell automata you have to run this inner loop of searching for these kind of DNA strings. But so maybe there's a better way to do it more efficiently. And I think in terms of what I said before, this work from some people that are here was very, I think, influential to our lab and many others, but basically showed if you have a target pattern that you want to grow, so I know I want to grow the salamander, then you don't have to run evolution. Then you can just search for that pattern directly and use use backpropagation to directly optimize the parameters of the network to grow a particular design. And so if you want to grow a particular structure, I would suggest using supervised learning. If you want to have it more open-ended, then maybe you should use evolution. But I don't know if Alex will also show this, but basically you can grow these structures and you can remove them and it will regrow. So we took this as inspiration, but we wanted to see if we can do this also in a 3D environment, and then maybe this is where this kind of the creature seeding idea came in. So I was always interested in this kind of how can we combine these things also with video games, and then we basically did the same thing. We took an existing design but made by a human, like this tree or apartment building, and then we used supervised learning to on that design to use an NCA that can grow these structures only through local interactions. And we're actually surprised at how well it did work. Growing structures that have so many, I mean, it has many different block types. The structures are kind of complicated, but it was able to, I think, most of the time perfectly kind of grow these structures, and it was also able to make functional structures, so taking advantage of this kind of redstone components, and it was able to grow them. So here we let it grow a salamander, and then and then again we of course made our cruel experiments. We cut it in half and seeing if it can regenerate, and then it can regenerate its friend, and then both of them are still able to locomote afterwards.
Question.
Yeah.
So this NCA, the states that we see are discrete.
Yeah.
Does it work on continuous states in the background, so you can differentiate?
Yes, exactly. Then we convert it into discrete.
I see.
At the end. Yeah.
But the NCA, I mean, when the NCA does its kind of looking around the neighbors, does it see the discrete state, or does it see a continuous representation of the?
That's actually a good question. Okay. I do think the discrete version. Okay. But I might be wrong. I have to look it up again.
So just to clarify, I mean, you pointed this out earlier, but it really is a case of you're figuring out a set of CA rules such that with respect to a seed initial condition, that's a set of translationally invariant rules, such that it'll grow that and then it'll stop.
Yes. So it has to. Sometimes you have to encourage it to stop. So you like also in the earlier work, like here what they, I mean, Alex could explain it better. Like you have to you for example train it to run between 60 and 80 steps. Yeah. So don't give it a fixed amount, and then you reward it at the end, or that it grows the pattern you want, to encourage it to not keep growing, for example. Like it shouldn't, because what you don't want is that it grows. You measure at exactly 60 steps. Did it grow what you want? And then at 61 steps, it destroys the pattern. So you would encourage it to be stable, for example.
I think you're not training for a path, but for a global attractor.
Yeah, so like we were using like very often a pool that was saying like take a random state from what you observed before, and then keep training for 60 to 80 steps, and you want it to be able to regenerate or to maintain the state.
I see.
You can also use the same thing. So this is some kind of, just wanted to show you can also use these grown patterns for something else. Then maybe you're not interested in Minecraft structures or pretty pictures. So the other thing you can do is, and we call this hyper NCA, you can grow a three-dimensional structure, a three-dimensional pattern, and what you can then do is with this, you can cut it into particular pieces and use those as the weight matrices for a neural network, and then you can use this neural network to control your policy. So this is one way, and that also works, and in this case we use evolution, so then we let it grow, we take the performance in this kind of reinforcement learning environment, and that is the fitness that we give this particular NCA. And that also works, and we can also grow this for more complicated tasks. Like here you see the cellular pattern, here is the resulting neural network policy, and then we put it in the robot, and it locomotes. Yeah.
I was just wondering for this, so this kind of stuff, I guess you can also achieve similar results if you use, for example, diffusion on the neural network weight. So is there an advantage from locality or from something else?
No.
To do it with NCAs?
No, so yeah, we're always looking for how to sell this, but it's basically like it's. I mean, one interesting thing I didn't talk about is now, but one interesting thing you can do is you can stop growth at different stages, and we call those like metamorphosis networks, and take the resulting stages as networks to control different quadrupeds. But it's hard to. You could have also trained for those individual robots with RL or something and might have gotten there faster. So currently, I don't know many examples where it's actually, and that's something I wanted to also bring up later in the discussion, like where these developmental systems like really outperform current state of the art yet. But the hope is that they will someday.
But for example, in this example, is the locality of the NCA translated in some way in the neural network structure?
Right. So in this case, this mapping is quite arbitrary, and though but actually this is a good question. This led to kind of follow-up work we did, which is not really pure NCA. That's why I called it a quick interlude. But basically, the whole so we wanted to generalize this because we thought this mapping was quite arbitrary. That we take this NCA pattern and paste it onto a network. So one thing we did in this is this Grow AI project that we've been working like the last kind of 2 years on different parts. I'm not going to go into too much details, but I just wanted to show it. So that's where we generalized the idea to not grid structures, but graph. So imagine like a graph neural network where so the growth of this graph neural network is controlled by an MLP that looks at the state of this neuron and then decides to add, for example, nodes. So it's kind of like a neural cell automata, but running on a graph where you have a better mapping between, it's not a little less arbitrary, this kind of mapping. But sometimes actually the hyper-NCA might be easier to optimize than this more principled version. And then we so this is kind of like a growth cycles of this system, and then again we tried it on different networks. And here you see the growth. So this is growth in contrast to NEAT that grows over evolutionary time. This is growth during like a development, the lifetime of the individual. It's before the birth of the individual. So we grow a structure, then we let the robot, then we put it into the environment, and then it can control a robot. Some things we worked on afterwards is how can we also allow this structure to change during the lifetime of the individual. So adding things like plasticity. This is something I'm also happy to answer a question on, but we are basically extending this, what we call the neurodevelopmental program in different dimension. And so here's like, this is kind of the inspiration, right? Ultimately, we want, this is not something we did, but ultimately we want the networks to kind of grow and complexify this kind of self-organizing process and then put it in robots, and then they learn something. So this is what this team has been working on for a while. So this is also, we keep looking at what their group is doing and then trying to copy it and change it a little bit. But basically, this is also was really cool work where, how many people have seen this here? Okay. Where you, Alex, you have seen it too? Okay, good. Where you can draw a digit and it recognizes, what digit you have drawn. And I thought it was really cool. And so the last, 2+ years, we have been working on trying to get this to work in hardware, and now we finally submitted a paper on this. Let's see, fingers crossed it gets accepted. But basically, imagine you use the system, but you have Lego blocks, and you can build any Lego model you want. You're building a plane or you're building a ship, and then the model, each cell tells you what do you think it did? What structure? Like it tells you I'm a ship, or I'm a plane, or whatever. And so we built these. When I say we, I mean I had students that built these cubes, like 250 of them. So it's a lot of work. And then we could make different objects, and then we could, initially they all have random states, but they communicate with their neighbors, and then they figure out, okay, I'm actually a table, or I'm some other design. And again, only on the local communication of these cells with each other. And I actually also went to Lego and tried to sell this to them at some point, and I don't know, they were not so interested. Maybe they're doing it themselves, probably. I mean, I think this would be really cool, especially if you imagine these structures could be actuated, right? You make a dinosaur, and then it starts to make dinosaur sounds. I would like to play with that, but yeah, it's just so only local communication, and then so you can look at some nice videos. So, and this was really just like, yeah, last week we submitted. So here you see like a table, slowly figuring out that it's a table, so it should become yellow at some point.
So that's a simulation, right?
No, this is physical.
This is physical.
This is real cubes.
I think actually exists.
This is a ship. Yeah, some of these models. This is, you can even almost recognize this. There's a guitar that doesn't look like a guitar at all. But this is a plane. It's also a little bit bright. It's easier to see.
And this is resilient to perturbation. Like if you remove a few blocks.
Yeah, we'll see some.
Will it regrow?
Sorry?
Will it regrow?
Yeah, we did some tests in simulation.
Can it go the other way where you start with the seed and then you have a, like, let's say chair as the goal, and then it tells you where to attach the next block?
Yeah. We also in simulation we did it only in simulation, but it would be cool to run it on the real robot, because I'll show you something in a second. So this is a guitar. Don't laugh. Hey, that's not don't laugh. So here you see just a summary of basically what I showed you before. And here are shapes it hasn't seen during training. And so this kind of out of distribution, we made a new table that has more legs, 5 legs, and in different weird positions. Here we took that ship and moved the bridge to up here. We did a scaled down version of the plane. And here we did the table smaller. The table didn't work. So this is we want to show it also failed sometime. This is the failure case.
It was classified as a ship.
Sorry?
Chair?
As a ship or what?
Chair.
Chair.
And I'll show you later why it thinks it's a chair.
Chair is a table for your butt, so it's...
Yeah. How do you know if it's a chair or table? It's hard to say. And here's just some visualization of the hidden channels. And for different, it's also kind of hard to see. So this is actually visualizing. So some of those results are in simulation, the bigger models, and the smaller ones are from the actual hardware. Okay, this is a little hard to see, but basically what I want to show you, how does it distinguish between a chair and a table? And so there's some interesting things happening here. Like so here we can visualize the hidden channels, and for a table, it's often first is established as like these kind of the channel 7 and 21. 7 makes like a kind of a bilateral division, and channel 21 is like a radial pattern. And we can see this with this table and also this table design. Again, we see like some division here, and here's a more radial pattern. And in the chairs, we don't see this as pronounced. And how it kind of discovers it's a chair, at least that's our kind of hypothesis, because it's hard to know exactly what's going on. It seems to be first, and if you look at the classification here, so it's first classifying this part as a table, so yellow is table, and then it kind of, the backrest is kind of diffusing out some kind of information that, hey, you're not a chair, you're not a table, you're actually a chair. And so this is what we think happens, that it kind of, the default is kind of like a table, but if you have a backrest, then it would diffuse that out and convince the other cells, hey, we're actually not, we're not a table, we're actually a chair. Yeah.
So is it somehow, I mean, do the cubes have like gravity sensors? Or I mean, can they know that it's vertical?
They know, I mean, they have an orientation.
They have an orientation.
Yeah, they have an orientation.
Are those isotropic? Like, do they have an orientation in these blocks, or
Orientation?
yeah, do they know where up is?
Yeah, I mean, they are fixed, like there's a certain, they're all oriented the same way, like they can be, like, we don't rotate them. They know this is left and right, I guess. Yeah.
So what are the channels? What does that mean?
So the channels, so this is the neural cell automata doesn't just get from the neighbors the state, like is my neighbor thinking it's a plane or a chair or whatever, but they also have additional, like I think 24 channels that they can use to communicate any type of information. So instead of, so one channel is this actually the class, right? Like is one channel, what cell are you? But there are additional channels that each cell can decide what information should that channel be, and they figure out some kind of way of communicating. Basically, they have to figure out some kind of language to communicate with each other. And that is free for them to decide what information that is that they transmit.
Each channel is a real number.
Yeah. It's like 24 real numbers. So the state of each cell is 24 real numbers plus one number, or like a plus, I think 7 for like one hot encoding for which class you think you are. Yeah.
About the table example for channel 21, what if you would put a hole? Suppose that the pattern would change, like you have some kind of different distribution of.
Yeah, so we have some examples in the next one where we looked at like damage detection as well. So here's just some results of how well it does classification, and then we also tested how well does it do in hardware with increased number of failure rate, where basically you knock out 5% or 10% or 50% of those cells, and there we found some interesting results. So some designs, like the boat and the plane, are really robust to increased noise, and some other shapes are very brittle, like the guitar is already at 5% noise. Can be that it doesn't class, so higher is better, that it is not able to classify. And so then and it makes sense if we look at the designs. So with the plane is actually quite robust. So here's the different, you see examples of 5 different runs with different damage. So here, this is the damage it has, and it's able to still classify. Here's another damage pattern it's still able to classify. But the guitar, for example, is quite brittle, and it seems like it can be explained by the guitar only has like one communication channel in the neck of the guitar, and damage here and here and here is very detrimental to the performance of this system. So performance goes, it goes down with those type of designs. So some objects lend themselves are much more robust. Some other objects are quite brittle, which kind of makes sense. Yeah.
So, I mean, during training, you had just the one pattern, right? You didn't have multiple guitars or multiple scales, or
we had multiple. We have multiple guitars, multiple chips, multiple tables. Yeah.
During training.
Yeah. But when we also tested it on things that hadn't seen during training. And also and then it was also trained with stochastic activation. So sometimes nodes would not be activated during training. So there was training for robustness. Yeah. But in some cases, there's just nothing you can do if the damage divides. There's no information that can propagate from here to here. Then you're a little bit out of luck. But then we also trained it for damage detection. So we were, and that's something we still have to do in hardware. That works in software. So we also trained it to detect the direction of damage, and that's what you could use to, if you know where you have something missing, you could use it to interactively reconstruct or grow something. But basically it was then able to, here you see some shapes, and it tells you, here's the legend, but it tells you in what direction it expects a node that is not there. And then we can damage the object, and it's able to tell me, where's something missing. So here it says in the Z direction, yellow, there's something missing. Here it says in the X direction, there's something missing. And then also, unfortunately, only in simulation, we can then use it to reconstruct the object. So here we cut it off, and then it tells me where should I fill the voxels. We fill it. We again run the algorithm. It tells me, oh, there's something missing here. And again, and after 5 steps, we basically have regrown the damaged object. And it works quite well, so it gets like accuracies of 90-something %, detecting the direction of all kinds of different damage. Yeah.
So just a question. So you said unfortunately only in simulation, but shouldn't it? I mean,
so this should work. It should work in hardware.
Right. I mean, but isn't it just the identical algorithm? Or?
Yeah. The thing is somehow it's more like a technical thing that the code we have for this is different to the other one, and that's why. And when we run this one, it doesn't seem to work, but it should work as well.
I see.
It's something, yeah, that there's some weird thing going on, and but it should also work because it's, as you said, it's the same thing, but it's just different code bases.
What size is the neural network that does the update for each cell? How many parameters, roughly?
Yeah, it's like no, I don't know.
I mean, on the order of 1,000? Or?
Yeah, like not less than 10,000. Yeah.
Okay.
It's like a 3-layer.
Yeah, it's like yeah, it's very similar to what we used also for the Minecraft stuff. Yeah.
So in each of the physical blocks, you
have the network running. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like
is it a full computer or is it specialized?
Like a PCB. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And for the reconstruction, during the training, it memorize or it learn and is able to generalize. Like if you show 100 of different type of table, it memorize. So
no, it's so this is test accuracy. So this shows the accuracy on things it hasn't seen before.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's able to generalize to damage it hasn't seen. Yeah.
Did you also try to scale the size of the subjects?
So we have in simulation, we have slightly bigger structure. I think the biggest structure we have in simulation is like 600 cubes, and in the hardware is like 250. We haven't tried to scale beyond that because we just didn't have more. The idea was more to show it in the physical world, and we just didn't have more physical cubes. But I think it should. I mean, I feel like it should work for also much larger structures, but we haven't tried it. No.
And so about the orientation thing, have you thought about ways to make it independent of?
Yeah, not yet. I think you could train for it, but currently, like the way so the blocks are, there's only kind of. So this is the. Oh.
Yeah, actually, the NCA classification. I mean, the digits classification, was it rotational invariant? I mean, would it work if you rotated?
No.
Or probably not.
Oh,
6 and 9 are probably.
Yeah. Yeah. So it would be fun to, but yeah. More questions on this one? Yep.
It would be also fun to detect if something is like extra. So that you can like you have a brick and it says I want to grow something here, and then it says I think this should be removed. And then it's an interesting generative model that
it should be very easy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Yep.
Not a question. Just do you think it would be possible to say it classifies itself as a table? And because it knows it is a table, the cells sort of change color so that the top is brown and the legs are black. So once it's self-classified, it sort of also adopts the color.
Oh, I see. Yeah, I guess that's interesting. I guess if you would, then you would have to train it afterwards, right?
Yeah.
No, I think that would be fun. Yeah, that could be.
Like you make a Christmas tree.
Yeah. True. That would be cool.
Probably the internal states, you already have all the information. Like you could even do that with training.
Yeah, so that would be fun. Yeah, to try. Yeah.
Would you have ways to make it scale invariant? As in, if you made a really big table.
It should. So we only tried it on the smaller version in hardware because we didn't have more cubes. But I do think it should be already it was scale invariant to smaller structures, so I think it should also, if you had a bigger one, it should work.
Wouldn't this be testable in the software setting? Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, we could test it in software. That is true.
So you said you tried selling this to Lego, you were saying?
I mean, at some point, maybe a year ago, I had a meeting with some, also because I work in Denmark, so like, we want to be good friends with Lego. No, but, and then, yeah, I had a meeting with them, and I could assume they make something themselves like this, and so they didn't want to, I don't know.
Or IKEA, maybe.
No, maybe IKEA.
I know, Swedish,
yeah,
yes, I know.
It tells you where to spy the next piece or something. No, that would be, yeah, maybe it's even better. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, there's some follow-up work or like some concurrent work that we also did. Like you can use the same approach then, but to for a robot to determine, you know, once you know what structure you are, then it also can tell you what neural network you should run to you know, to locomote. So this is work we did actually earlier, but the other project just took so much time to finish, but basically I can run this algorithm. It tells me what robot shape I am, and then I choose from a library of neural networks to then put running them, and that kind of and then run a yeah. And here there was actually those robots where we did some study on the sizes, and it does need a certain size, otherwise it doesn't work anymore. So in this case we had 82 convolutional layers with 80 filters. If you reduce this number to 30 and 30, you know, for more complicated shapes, which this classifies, it doesn't work so well anymore. So they do need to have which makes sense, they have to have a certain capacity for learning. So I think it's the last thing I wanted to show, is that we, so this is also kind of an interlude, or what do you call an interlude at the end? Is there a name for that?
Outro.
An outro.
Denouement.
So one thing we wanted to do, and this is kind of, we wanted to, I told my postdoc that we should do this because I feel like I remember reading a story about you can put people, you know, you put people in a big, I don't know, outside, and they have to figure out what shape they are making. But then I tried to find the example again, I couldn't, and maybe I don't know, there must be some people that have tried this before, but basically where everybody only sees their local neighbors, and then you have to figure out, am I part of what kind of shape? And so that gave us the idea, could we do the same thing, the self-classifying MNIST digits, or now self-classifying like shapes? Could we do this also with language models, where they have to figure out what part of the shape they are by talking to each other? And this is work we just submitted to this Alife conference. So in this case, each cell is a language model, or like like each cell is run by a language model. They have to communicate to figure out which part of the shape they are in, and each one receives messages from their k-nearest neighbors. And they have an internal state they can update, and they can generate a hypothesis of what they think. And this hypothesis is like which digit denotes the, like, hypothesized what digit it is. The self role is the agent's hypothesized position within that digit, so they get locations. And then they have a confidence of how confident they are, and some additional comments they can add. And so we just got some initial promising results, and I just show you maybe the video. Before I show you the video, here's an example of the belief over time what they think they are a shape of. And in this case, you know, they discuss, and then over time, for example, they figure out their shape. And this only works for not variations of digits, but like one particular example of a 1, or one particular example of a 2, and one particular example of a 3. So much, very simplified problem. But
is there training involved?
No. So it was more like just setting up a way that they can hypothesize. So there is no training. There's just the discussion phase. And here you can see what they are thinking. Like I'm at 5.2, and this shows multiple steps of where they reach some kind of consensus. So we can maybe I pause.
Cheat in the end. I mean, is the cell aware of the position of all the other cells in the end by passing the message each time, or they do some?
So they seem to be doing something a little bit more. So they say like, unfortunately this is a GIF, so I can't stop it. But
yeah.
they say like this structure strongly suggests digit 6. So I think I'm part of. You know, my neighbor said they are part of some kind of weird corner, and so it was more like a fun. Is it even possible? Apparently, it's kind of possible for like simple things. The question is how much can you scale it? But yeah.
But in this case, they have the global coordinates, each one of them.
Yeah, and then they know their neighbors.
Yeah. And so they only talk to the neighbors.
Yeah.
But they know exactly.
But the neighbors can pass information from other neighbors. Yeah.
But they know that I'm at 3.3. They don't just know.
Yeah. Yeah, so this was a kind of a fun side project.
Would it work if someone said, oh, there's a person to my left, and I mean, if they only knew the local information?
Yeah, we tried also with local, not absolute coordinates, but relative coordinates, and that also seemed to work.
I see.
And different language model. We tried a few different language model, and now I don't remember which one, but some differences between the models, what they kind of communicate, and yeah. But now, it would be funny to make it a little bit more complex and see what they can figure out. Yeah.
It only in 6 steps is all there. How many rounds of communication do you need?
Sorry, how many?
How many rounds of communication do they need? Like how much?
I think 10, maybe 10 steps. Something like that's the 7 steps. Yeah.
Go back to the...
And I mean, one thing that would be interesting to of course have some learning in the loop. So can they over time make because right now we gave the prompts that make them hypothesis, and then we had to make sure that we encourage them to not too early commit to being a particular number, so we have so those kind of things like this prompt engineering would be great if you could you could optimize that and get better and better at it, which would be interesting. So wrapping up. So this was just kind of some ideas for like discussion. So because I didn't really talk so much, the workshop is about detecting complexity, and I didn't talk about it. So I thought at least I should mention it in the discussion. But I feel like there are different ways, and also I guess we are going to have a great talk on Wednesday on using these visual language models. They can of course help maybe in inspecting what do these models actually learn, but it's also not maybe so straightforward. Of course you can manually inspect things, but that also doesn't only scale so much. I do think there's a lot of like using kind of these quality diversity algorithms to illuminate what do those things learn can be very beneficial. So in general, we try to use those to see what kind of space does it learn, and you can encourage it to find different types of solutions which can give you more insights in what did it do. And also one thing I talked with some other people here before, what kind of could be grand challenges for our field and to push it forward? Because I feel like the deep learning field, they had a lot of they have this North Star, that kind of pushes innovation towards, they had ImageNet and whatever, but we are very kind of diverse, which is also a plus. We're very diverse, but we don't seem to have like one set of challenges that would be good, or where we can measure kind of progress. Everybody makes their own kind of benchmark and things, which is fun. But I'm just wondering if there could be more. Is there like a North Star for us for this field of artificial life or developmental encodings and self-organization that we can strive towards? So yeah, wrapping up. So neural cell automata, they show interesting kind of emergent phenomena. Another interesting paper by Akash that just came out. Also, one thing we didn't look so much into it, but how are the representations of these different systems actually different? Like, so if you compare like a CPPN representation to an NCA representation, and if you compare some that are trained through gradient descent, or if you compare it if they're trained through evolution, how are those representations different? How much do they allow, open-endedness, and so there's a lot of things I think that we can look at, and also like one thing is, the search methods for finding these kind of solutions. You can have the best representation, but if your search method is too restricted and doesn't take, you might not know that your method is even good, and you might not find anything interesting because it doesn't lend itself to being optimized in particular way. So yeah, those are some things that we're thinking about. And yeah, with that, thank you very much. Happy to answer any questions. Yeah. You too.
It's a very simple question, but have you ever seen this bio wall at EPFL?
Bio, I'm not sure.
Because it's a very early thing of 90s of, computers interacting with their neighbors, like a matrix of computers. And you can kill some of them artificially, and you can see how they survive at doing there.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
It's pretty cool.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know if it's still working, but it's in the IC building over there.
Okay, cool.
It is in the INM building.
Yeah. Okay.
It's pretty cool.
Okay, cool. I'll check it out if it's
very inspiring for
still live. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. This one's on CPPNs. Do you know if, say, the complexity or the minimum viable CPPN you need to reconstruct an image is somehow linked to the complexity of the image? So, like a very simple image needs a very simple CPPN. But
in general, I would think there's a correlation between like the number of, the complexity of the image, how many kind of different. If it's very symmetric, you need less than if it's very asymmetric. Like, so if you need on the most extreme, I guess, would be a random noise pattern, would be a very, very complicated CPPN.
Yeah.
But even if you, so some like this results on, the problem is, even if you have a pattern that is generated by CPPN, you will not be able, and use that pattern as a fitness function you will not be able to get that pattern again. So there's work by Stanley and Woolley from, 10 years ago, because you don't know the stepping stones that led to that picture. So if you want to re-evolve a CPPN to create a particular pattern, like a pattern of a butterfly or something, it will completely fail. And this is basically, shows that with evolution you can't re-evolve it. This paper shows that with gradient descent, so this is actually what they did here. Like with, this is a pattern of a skull that was generated by a CPPN. If I try to re-evolve the CPPN that made that skull, I will not get there. If I can use a fixed network and use gradient descent to get that image, but then you will have a very, very bad representation.
Well, I read that paper, but wasn't it? I mean, I found it a bit weird because with the CPPN, it's sort of a more sparse network, where with the gradient descent, they have the fully connected network.
Yeah.
So you have like twice the amount of neurons. So, and with backpropagation, you're changing all of them. So of course your representation is going to look a lot more chaotic.
Yeah, it's maybe not so surprising, but the problem is that there is no other way to replicate the skull, basically.
Yeah.
So I think that was more the point, not like, and maybe there are ways to encourage it to have, also why is this? Don't know what happened there. But maybe there could be some other regularization that you should have sparser or something else. But this shows kind of with standard gradient descent, it will look like the pattern, but it will be a very different representation.
Yeah.
You show a biological, some biological neurons earlier. Do you know if there is NCA applied to artificial neurons, trying to use the Automata for creating artificial neurons?
To create, like, you mean in to make a policy network, or to like actually real neurons, or
yeah, create a neural network.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this is basically what we in this with this neurodevelopmental program. The idea, the idea is to. This is kind of what this does. That it grows from one single starting node. You have a neural network running in this node, and that neural network, kind of like an NCA, says, should I divide or should I change some connection, or what should I do? I mean, this is basically like, yeah, it's like a graph neural network that can add nodes, basically. Yeah?
Yeah, maybe I have a more general question. As you said, we use this step range when we train NCA in order to make the pattern stable that is evolved. And what if one wants to have the pattern oscillate between maybe two attractors or more? Do you have any ideas how it can be done? Is there any recipe already known?
I think, Alex, you did something like that, no? Like where you had an NCA pattern that can oscillate between two different states, no?
Well, I think we tried something like that, and then there was a group that, like, there were a bunch of people who experimented with these ideas, like NCA pattern that detects some change and then switches to a different state. I mean,
yeah,
a bunch of courses like this.
Yeah, but yeah, I think you could encourage it to.
I think in Akarsh's paper they had something like this, where they had two goals, like in the prompt, at like one at time 100, the other at 200. I don't know if it oscillated, so I don't know if they trained it to go back to a previous state, but you could at least get it to go from one state to another. So I imagine if you had a third one that's back to the original, then maybe you could get it to.
Yeah, we tried it. Like often it just works with going one state, second state, third state, and then it just learns the oscillation. But that's not enforced. So sometimes it happens, sometimes it happens.
Right. We have a more general questions about NCAs, I mean, also for other people in the room. So NCAs, very often they are used, like you said, with a target goal and then optimized with gradient descent. But NCAs in themselves, they are a very rich CA, right? By definition, you can almost embed a huge amount of different CA rules.
Right.
So I was wondering if anybody has tried exploring this parameter space of NCAs with some more open-ended metric of complexity or something like this. Not optimized for a specific goal, but maybe for some more random dynamics, let's say.
Yeah, random dynamics, I don't know, like they did also, for example, in this, where they're growing this video game Zelda like levels, so they did compare different approaches depending on how well they illuminate this map elite's space. Okay. But those were, and then they showed that some approaches, can cover a larger space, they can create more variation than some other ones. But I don't know if they don't particularly like explore like just randomly generating them. I guess they're more like optimized towards quality diversity.
I see.
Maybe then this concludes our first day. Thank you, everyone.